so to lose him, you know, like that was pretty devastating, because he was always there as a voice, uh, you know, speaking to me,
Sure.
warning me about things, and there's a lot of man. I spent a lot of time on my dad,
Talk about your
but
dad, dude. Honor your father. Let's hear it. Welcome to Aftermath, a Faith Odyssey. I'm your host, Conan Markey. Today's guest is Luke Medlin, a former gunnery sergeant of the United States Marine Corps. This is my first guest that I did not serve with, so I'm looking forward to finding out about the Marine Corps and what he went through and his perspective on God, which I think you'll find interesting as well. Luke has done tours in both Iraq and Afghanistan, and while he was in Afghanistan, his unit was featured on the movie The Best and Worst Years of My Life, which you can check out and will give you a cool perspective on what it's like to fight in the global war on terror. While serving in the Marine Corps, Luke's faith was so bold that his men gave him a nickname. This is the aftermath of the Mad Dog Preacher.
my name is it's Luke Medlin, and I'm 48 years old. I am a 15-year veteran of the Marine Corps,
Oh, wow.
um, and so did 2 tours in Iraq, 2 in Afghanistan, and so
You've
uh,
been busy.
yeah, yeah,
You've
busy
been
life.
busy. So, um, you did you start life out in the church? Is this something that happened afterwards, or
Yeah, so typical kid grew up in church, but then the teen years come along, and it's like, didn't I really want to do this? Really, is when I hit 18 and I went away in the Marine Corps, and of course the barracks life and uh, all the things that you get exposed to in the military. Uh,
right?
but I had. But I had some officers that kind of influenced me later on in life. They kind of changed me. I realized there was more people that went to church than didn't, and it was interesting to find out, that there was a lot of Marines that went to church. So
No
it kind of
kidding.
changed me, kind of got me back on the right path. Um, Later.
So when did you graduate? When did you join the Marine Corps?
So I graduated high school in '95, and went straight to boot camp, and and was stationed in North Carolina first, or excuse me, yeah, North Carolina first at Camp Lejeune. That's actually kind of where I kind of went a little wild, crazy,
Yep.
and life kind of um, you know took some wrong turns, and but then um, eventually, I would say probably about 2, 3 years of my life, and then toward the end there, I kind of straightened up, and then came home, stayed in the reserves, wanted to stay in the reserves, keep my service going, and then I got more involved in ministry after that. So
Okay. So you said these officers kind of steered you back towards the church?
yeah, it was an encounter I wasn't expecting. We had been in Central America on a humanitarian mission after a hurricane. It was probably about 96 or 97. I can't remember.
Really?
It was a lieutenant colonel, and he handed me a book. I still have the book to this day. Uh, and he told me, he said, you ought to read this. He said, this may change uh, your outlook on Christianity and your faith. And it was basically it was a story on Rockefeller, and how Rockefeller, Norman D. Rockefeller, the original, the um, he uh, used his belief or Christianity to build the empire. He believed that God gave him the smarts and the wisdom to build an oil empire. And it was to, people, it's really interesting when you read the book, you look at it a whole different because people always, the Rockefellers, they're so evil, they did this and that, but actually he did quite a bit for society, for people in need. YMCA's were built all over the United States. That was Rockefellers. They built that. They built that for boys, troubled boys, so they wouldn't be on the streets.
No kidding.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things, and you don't hear about that in history, but there was a lot of things, even medical science and things that he contributed to, and he felt like it was his calling to do that by building his empire and then employing people and giving. So but it was the ones later on in life that kind of ruined that reputation. His grandsons and so on. So, but
It's interesting. I am gonna look into that because you don't hear that. I've never heard
yeah,
that before.
yeah,
So I'm curious. What was this lieutenant colonel that gave you the book? Was he a chaplain? And what about
no.
you that this lieutenant colonel said you specifically, Marine? I think you in particular should read this book and it will enhance your faith. What was
It,
going
it,
on there?
it was a lieutenant colonel. He was a battalion. He wasn't a chaplain. He saw something in me, and I don't know what it was that why he picked me out of everybody else, but it was something that he saw in me. He said, I think this would help your walk. I think maybe because sometimes I would talk about church or I'd talk about God,
Mm-hmm.
but it was like I didn't really get deep into the conversation when talking with people, and I think he picked up on that and he noticed that, and then he handed me that book, and that really impacted me. So, um,
Okay, so what about that book changed your perspective?
well, it was more so, when you get around, uh, how it is. You get around people, and it's like you're trying to fit in and everything, but you read the book, you see where he stood for his faith. Well, I mean, here's a perfectly good example. The latest that's been going on in the news with Charlie Kirk,
Mm-hmm.
how he stood for his faith, and Rockefeller stood for his faith. People knew that he was a devout man, even in business. People would go to him for charity. They knew that he was all about helping people in need, and it impacted those around him. And the more you read it and you think about it, it's like, oh, man, am I really making an impact by being along with everybody else, or am I going to make a bigger impact by being different and standing out and standing for what I believe, what I know to be true, and that is that Christ is King, and I need Him in my life, and it can do whole lot more than me, being stupid and drunk.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Right. Which is
yeah,
typical for the combat MOSs. Yes.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Hanging from the barracks balcony,
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Repelling. using blankets to repel.
Yeah, sure. Right. Why not? Why
Yeah,
wouldn't you do something
yeah,
like that?
yeah.
Um, so you did a humanitarian aid down in South America. Whereabouts?
Uh, it was in. I wanted to say it was. We did two, so it was Honduras and El Salvador.
Okay.
I think we were in El Salvador at that time, when he handed me that book. So it was toward the end of the operation. So,
Right.
and we were going back home, and he handed that to me, and I was like, okay, wow, all right. Lieutenant Colonel's looking at me, and at that time I was just a young Lance Corporal. I didn't have much rank, didn't have much, you know, uh, pull or say in anything. And it's like, you'd think, give that to the gunny, give that to the staff sergeant or something. But, he gave that to me. So I was like, wow. So,
No kidding. I I like that. I like that God worked in that lieutenant colonel and was like, you know what, you in particular.
yeah.
The so after you read that book, like I find that people generally like, it's just that there are these like little benchmarks or pivot points along their road to salvation. And so obviously that was one. And then you said you did 2 tours in Iraq and 2 tours in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Um, were you were you in the reserves at that point? Were you
Well,
active?
so after 9/11, um, it, of course, it hit pretty hard. So I knew I was going to get activated. So I talked to my reserve command and went and talked to a recruiter. And so I went on active duty. And so I went right back in. And my MOS as a combat engineer was going to be a highly sought after MOS. I knew they were going to be needing engineers. So I went right back into the engineer MOS as a primary MOS.
What
So
was your company battalion? Where I don't know anything about the Marine Corps structure where you guys are located or anything
yeah,
like that. So
so Marine Corps engineers are a little bit different than the Army. So I think in the infantry battalions, you guys have them already integrated. Is that correct? Or I
not
can't
usually
remember.
no.
Okay, well, so like our engineer battalions are totally separate. They're part of the division or group, whichever one. And we have three. You have division, group, and wing.
Okay.
And so your division you'll have a company go to a battalion or regiment, and they'll split up that company, and so each platoon will go to a different battalion,
Okay.
and that platoon will get split up between each company, and so
Hmm.
you have a squad of engineers with each platoon uh, within that company.
Okay.
The division side, the group side is that's your well, it's no longer called group, it's called what do they call them now, marine logistics MLBs or regiment, something like that. I can't remember, they changed it right as I was getting out, but it used to be the FSSG, Force Service Support Group. So basically, they were in supported division. They roll up behind, do more of your defensive positions, but then they can also be called up to support division um, if needed. If engineers were needed for more breaching. So if there wasn't enough in division, hey, we need the you know uh, group guys coming, and that's where your bridging companies came in.
Okay.
And then the ones in the wing, they're the ones that went and they put your airfields in. Um, so when they needed an immediate airfield, those are the engineers that did that. So
Okay.
that's how the Marine Corps split it up. So
All right.
so
Interesting. So how did we get from the young Lance Corporal who was given this book about Rockefeller to being called Mad Dog Preacher by your guys? How do we get there? What happened in between there?
uh, so when I went back on active duty, at that time I had already been involved in ministry quite extensively. And so at that time, I was a sergeant, and a lot of I had a squad at the time, and the Marines, knew my faith. So at that time, I was more boisterous about it. I was more outgoing about it. And so that's what my Marines named me, because they call me preacher, and then there's like Mad Dog Preacher. Somebody just came up with it one day and it stuck, and so then everybody started calling me Mad Dog Preacher.
I like it.
So I had one Marine in. in the platoon. He was really good. So on the back of my Kevlar, they had painted or drew wings. I got wings, and then Mad Dog Preacher is the name in the middle there with wings coming out.
I like it.
On the desert, camouflage, drawing wings on the back of my head in my
I like it.
Kevlar.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Was what was the dynamic like sharing your faith with the Marines but yet keeping it professional and walking that line?
Yeah, so it's like they say that there's no atheists in foxholes. When we were doing the build up going into Iraq, everybody was curious. Is this it? And of course, is their life gonna end here? And so it presented a great opportunity. And I mean, we would sit around for hours, um, just talking Bible. Um, and we'd have Bible studies almost every night while we're waiting for the word, to go cross the line of departure.
Right.
Everybody was reading Bible, and in fact, when it came time for us to roll across, the company commander asked me to give the prayer for, the company to roll across. So
Were you guys in the invasion or were you?
yeah,
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 no kidding.
yeah. So we were at a place called Safwan Hill,
Okay.
and it was just across the border from Kuwait. It was a mountain that was a lookout post, and so there was Iraqis on it. So they had put us as the engineers to clear and breach across. So that's where the first tanks from First Marine Division rolled across,
Hmm.
and um, uh, who else did we send? Because we, as engineers, when somebody crosses a breach point, you have to know the unit, you got to know how many vehicles rolled through, how many troops, and everything. So tanks were the first one, and then I think it was first LAR or second LAR went across, which is a light armored reconnaissance. Uh,
Hmm.
and It was pretty intense because, it was early morning and you can't see in front of your face. And then the night just lights up when Artie starts in.
Yeah.
And they hit that hill, I mean, with so much. And then there was, jets flying in, dropping bombs on the hill, just lighting up the sky. So it was like, the excitement and adrenaline. Everybody's like
Oh
yelling.
yeah.
So it was pretty intense. And then Cobra started flying. They went down the line, crossing the border. They go out so far and come back, and then they go out. And they were doing reconnaissance before tanks went across, and then at a certain point, the tanks started rolling, and that was it. It was on.
Right
So
on.
it
Right
was
on.
pushed to Baghdad. So
Yeah.
yeah,
No kidding.
yeah,
Yeah. No, that must have been intense. Like
yeah,
truly.
yeah. Didn't sleep for 48 hours.
I believe it. I
Yeah,
believe it. But you went twice.
yeah. So we were there for the invasion, and then once mission was declared, accomplished, we went back home, and then while we're sitting at home, then you start seeing the news where IEDs are going off everywhere, and it just
Yep.
started getting worse and worse, and it's like, man. So we knew we were going to get called back up and sent over, and so at that point, I had been selected to be the general's driver. Um,
Okay. Wow.
yeah, so they put me up to go for an interview. I went for the interview, got selected because a new general was coming in, and so then they sent me to all these schools for, evasive driving, tactical driving, things like that. I mean, it's
That's
pretty
cool.
cool stuff. Stuff like you see in the movies,
Yeah.
and then how to drive from the passenger seat and everything like that.
No way.
Yeah,
That's
it was pretty
awesome.
intense. Yeah, so throw the person out of the way and you grab the wheel and get a hold of the gas and the brake, and it's like, yeah, yeah, and then doing all the spin outs, reversing, like, hey, if we got to get out of a situation, how do we back up and spin the car around. Like, yeah, it's pretty fun.
Awesome.
So,
That- That's cool.
so we went to all those, and then so so then at that point I got to see a lot of what happens at the head shed making plans, and so knew it was going back. So being around the general, and so we had specific times and dates. So I knew when everything was happening. And then, of course, my old company, people were going, "Hey, when we going back? When we going to be like, I can't tell you, man.
Yeah,
Sorry.
right.
I'm wor-
That-
I'm working with Jim and all that's classified, but just pack your bags though. Be ready."
Yeah, right. Oh my word. So when was your second tour in Iraq, and where were you, if you don't mind me asking?
So we went back in. Trying to think, when was this? Wow, years are running together.
Yeah, they do.
2003 or 2004. It was when the Marines went back in.
Okay.
um, and went to Fallujah. So we went um, we went to Al Taqaddum. There was an airfield
Hmm.
that we had. So the wing was there, and then we were their group was there, and then division was at Camp Fallujah. So I was the driver and part of the protective detail for General Kramlich, who was the group CG,
Okay.
Commander General. And then right across the street from it was crazy because right across the street from us, so like we kind of controlled like I think what MSR was that. So like in one direction of the MSR, uh, we kind of controlled it, and then the other direction, Big Red One was right across the street from us,
Yeah, right.
and they controlled going the other direction. But there was always stuff happening um, out there. I don't know why we would get mortared, but then Big Red One, they would get in firefights um, across the street. People trying to hit the gate and everything. People trying to plant IEDs right outside their gate. And
Weird.
like, yeah, it literally. I mean, we could look across and there they are, and it was the craziest thing. So,
Interesting. Were there any mosques close to you?
oh yeah, yeah,
Cuz I know that kind of changed how they would attack us, cuz we were in this COP, and there was actually a mosque on the premises that we had taken over, like in the area, and it kept them from sending rounds too close to us because they were afraid of hitting the mosque. Kill an
yeah,
American, you're good. You hit the mosque, all done. So they didn't
yeah.
want to.
I don't know if they had a mosque, but I know we didn't. We
Okay,
Oh, it was an actual airfield, but there was mosques nearby that the the human intel guys would pick up, what they were saying when they were praying.
sure.
It was basically, kill the infidels, you know, kill Whitey.
Yeah, right.
I we so sometimes we would go out with the intel guys. They would need extra security, so the general would, send us out, to support them. And I asked the interpreter one time, I was like, we're sitting there while they're listening. We're way kind of off in the desert a little bit behind these hills. They don't know we're there, but it was close enough for them to be able to hear what was being said from the mosque. And so I was like, I said, so what's going on, man? We going over there for dinner? He goes, yeah, that's exactly what he's saying. He wants you over for dinner. He wants to have you for dinner is what he
Oh
wants.
wow.
Yeah.
So did you run into any Christians that were Iraqis?
I'm going, so I had a strange experience one time, and this was during the invasion. Um, and I didn't know I knew there were Christians in Iraq,
Mm-hmm.
just because of the history. But we rolled through, and I can't remember the village one time. We rolled through, and of course, everybody's got weapons outboard, and like I heard a voice speak to me and said, "These are mine." And I pulled my weapon back. I kind of like, did anybody else hear what I just heard? and I kind of sat back and I pulled my weapon back in, and it was probably one of uh, the easiest places to go through. You know, everybody was out waving. You know, of course, they all did that everywhere, but it was different. It was a
Mm.
different kind of atmosphere. You didn't feel like something was going to happen. And we rolled through there twice. We went there, um, going to one place. I can't remember. We were going. It was out. What was the name of it? It was another airfield we were going to. We went to take, and then we drove back through it to hit a route to go back up to Baghdad. And so both times going through there, it was just like, yeah, this is. I ain't got nothing to worry about going through here.
Where was this?
It was it was in southern Iraq.
Okay.
It was near the south. And I'm trying to remember the village. I'd have to look at a map to
Okay.
try to remember.
You don't have to. It's
You know,
fine.
but
It's fine. South
yeah,
of Baghdad, right?
yeah.
Okay.
But it was different. It was something. Um, and yeah, you know, because you know you're rolling into a place, and especially like we went through the fighting in Nasiriyah, Al Shantra. We'd already been in firefights. We'd already been you know kicking kicking doors and everything with them, and then like when we went through this one, it was like this nothing's gonna happen here, and it was like wow, So um, that was different. That was yeah. I don't know how to explain that one, but it just I heard that voice and just said these are mine, and I went. Somebody else had to hear that because it was like it was a voice.
Right. Yeah, no, I got you.
It wasn't like that quiet inside. No, it was like I heard a voice say, "These are mine," and I went, "Yeah."
Okay.
So
No
yeah,
kidding. No
yeah.
kidding. So I've never been to Afghanistan.
Uh,
Now, when were you in Afghanistan?
so Afghanistan was during the buildup when they were sending Marines back in for the buildup in 2008. We had went back in with it's called the Special Purpose MAGTF. So it was a combination of certain air wing assets group and then division. And so at that time I was with 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines. We were supporting them. So our platoon was attached to uh, that battalion, and then we divvied up the squad to each company and supported them. So,
Okay.
so my job at that time was a platoon sergeant, and so as we go around, I my job was going around making sure the Marines were doing their job properly. They had everything they needed. I would go out on missions with them, maybe help critique them in their mine sweeping, IED sweeping operations, and even assist them just to make sure we were doing an effective job for uh, the infantry
Sure.
and of course at that time when we came home we were one of the most decorated engineer platoons in the Marine Corps.
No kidding.
Yeah, but it's been since surpassed. But when we came back, we got division CG, and we have what's called a Master Gunnery Sergeant who's in operations. He came is like he was telling us they're all just congratulating because our guys I trained them hard. I prepared them. We went through a lot, but we had some we had some casualties. We had some Purple Hearts.
Hmm.
But we got some Bronze Stars. A couple guys got combat actions with V, Navy comms with V. So,
Yeah,
uh,
right.
yeah. So, we came back as one of the most decorated engineer platoons in the Marine Corps at that time.
Right
So,
on, man.
yeah,
That's good.
yeah.
So Do you think that your time in the military gives you a different perspective on God that you might not otherwise have?
Yeah, you look at life differently. Um, yeah, it's you value it more.
Mm-hmm.
You value life a whole lot more. Um, and not just yours, but other people. Um, and it's you just you treat people differently, you know, with a lot more respect, a lot more. And I know there are guys that have problems with PTSD, and I had issues with PTSD, um, but even with the PTSD, you still, you know, you want to beat the guy up that's being rude to the cashier,
Yeah, right. Yeah,
you want to like, dude, seriously, you
yeah,
know, it ain't that bad,
right,
you know,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, no, no, yeah, I get it. I
yeah,
completely get it. Um, so in between your your time in the active and then you were in the reserves and then you went active again. What was your church life like there? What was your spiritual life like
yeah.
in that
So
interim?
yeah, so when I was in the reserves, I'd gotten involved in ministry and was actually traveling and going to different churches and ministering. I got involved in ministry, so I was a on the road evangelist at the
Oh
time.
wow.
Yeah, so I was doing that, and then I would do my 1 week in a month, and then go back out on the road, and I was pretty busy.
Mm-hmm.
Stayed pretty busy doing that, but then once 9/11 happened, you knew everything was kicking off. So, but yeah, I'd been probably at that time on the road. Um, I was probably, oh man, um, trying to think. I've been Texas, Arkansas, everything probably east of the Mississippi. I had been
No
in
kidding.
all those states, evangelizing, preaching at different churches. A couple times in Arkansas, a couple times in Texas, but most of the time it was east of, the Mississippi. So
How did you know that God wanted you to do that? Like, how was it a kind of like wearing on you over time, or was like,
yeah, oh yeah. So it becomes this burning um, drawing that you can't sleep, you can't get off your chest. It's a heavy weight.
mm.
And it's like, okay, God, are you calling me to do this? Is this what and of course you're doing the whole Gideon thing, Lord, let there let there be dew on it, and if not, everything else is drying and reversing, because I don't know if I believe the first one.
Yeah, right. Well,
And so,
I find people are unduly critical of Gideon, I think, in that regard, because I think that demonstrates an actual fear of God.
yeah,
Like I don't want to screw this up,
yeah, yeah,
you know.
exactly. And the thing is, though, we criticize Gideon, but yet we all do it, though. We all do it,
Absolutely.
and so I would do the same thing. I would like throw this fleece out there, like, okay, God, is this really what you want me to do? Am I really supposed to do this?
Yep.
And so it when you can't get rid of that weight that you feel, and it's a heaviness and just a drawing. It's like, okay, God, and then if you want me to do this, then you got to open the door. Well, you better be careful when you whenever you pray. I always tell people, be careful what you pray and ask for, because uh, as soon as I said, "Okay, God," then you open the door, you make it happen, and boom, it happened. And that's happened twice in my life when I've been specific like that. So when I left the Marine Corps, it was the same way.
This is where I would like to spend some time.
Yeah,
And the reason that is because I want people to know that there is an active God out there and that he will interact with us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So what was the first time like? What was the second time
So,
like? And
so the first time, I was like, okay, God, then you got to open the door because, I can't do this on my own. And my dad, I was actually riding with my dad. He was going to a church to preach in Kentucky at the time, and we're driving down. He's like, what's your thoughts? What's God been talking to you about? And so I started sharing with him, a message that I felt like I was going to preach at least sometime. I didn't know when. And the message, the title that I had was "The Awesome Power of Passion." And we're driving down the road, and my dad's like, "Man, that's good. That's good." No joke. This car pulls in front. We're on the interstate, and this car pulls in front of us, and the license plate says "Passion." And my dad goes, he looked at that, he looked at me, and he goes, "You're preaching." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "I'm going to talk to the pastor, and you're going to preach." And so we get down there, and so my dad, talked to the pastor and let me preach. So I preached the first service, and then that opened it up. And so he wanted me to come back, and I did a revival, my first ever revival, 3 nights, and then it
oh
just
wow,
went from there. And then he, referred me on to somebody else, and then it just boom, and that's
no
how it
kidding.
went. But that's how it started.
Wow,
Yeah,
isn't that
and
something?
yeah, and I mean, to this day, it gives me chills. Thinking about that car when that car pulled in front of us, and the fact that the license plate it was spelled out passion. It was just like my dad was like, "This is God."
You're
There's no
preaching.
way. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's
So
awesome.
when I was leaving the Marine Corps, well, I was stationed in Okinawa. I just got back from my second deployment to Afghanistan, and um, I was trying to reenlist. I was going to reenlist, and I was going to spend another 3 years in Okinawa because I loved it.
Oh
It was
yeah,
a good duty station, and I didn't get to enjoy it as much because I was deployed, most of the time
right.
to Afghanistan. So I was like, maybe these next 3 years would be different, and because they were going to move me at that time, I was a company gunny, and they were they had moved me to headquarters in the battalion that I was in, so that I wouldn't deploy as much uh, now because I'd already done two back-to-back deployments. And so where I lived on the island and the base where I worked was an hour drive. And so I would pray, going to work every morning, and then I'd pray, going home every evening. And God started dealing with me, about leaving, about getting out of the Marine Corps. And I would feel this tug, it's time to leave. It's time to leave. And I'm like, and I finally, and this is why I said that, be careful what you say, when you pray, be specific, but be careful when you're specific. I could take you to the exact spot, and it was a spot where there was a stop sign, and there's like, this rock wall, and you have to be careful because cars come up over this hill, and I stopped, and I just waited right there. And God was speaking to me, saying it's time to go. And I said, God, if you want me to leave, then you got to get me out because I just put in paperwork for reenlistment, and I'm not leaving unless you get me out. And I made that left hand turn, and I went home, and it's like I felt this like kind of like release, like okay. And so it wasn't bothering me as much. And I get home, and sorry,
Take your time.
I got home, and of course, we're up at, Asian time and different time zones, but I got a phone call that my dad was in the hospital, not expected to make it.
Okay.
and it happened that quick.
Yeah, sure.
And I said, "Okay, God, you really done it this time." And because me and my dad were close,
Sure.
and my dad. Funny thing is, my dad, he was very sensitive. He knew things, and there was times where when I would deploy, uh, there's no way he could have known some of the things, some of the intel briefings that I've been in, like being a platoon sergeant, being company gunny. Uh, we would have briefings before we leave, and he would tell me like, "Watch out for this and that." And I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! How do you know about that?" And he's like, "God told me." And I'm like, I just walked out of an intel briefing and they gave us all the scoop that there's nobody knows all this stuff, and you're telling me, God told you. Like, okay. And so like even in the video that I sent you,
Yeah.
you'll see there's a part in there where we got ambushed. And my dad told me that was coming. He told me, he said, I had a vision of you on patrol, and he said you didn't hesitate when you should have, and you got shot on the right side. He said, but if you'll listen to that voice, that's the voice of God telling you to wait. And I said, okay. And lo and behold, that day, where that video that I sent you, that was the day when I was a point man and my buddy was behind me, and we got to this T intersection, and I stopped. There was a wall. It was kind of looked like this, and there was an opening, and I just stopped, and I had that gut feeling. I was like, I said, "Man, we're about to get hit, and it's going to come from the right side." And he goes, "You sure?" And I said, "Yeah." I kind of did a turkey peek, and I was like, "Yeah." And so he literally put his rifle across my shoulder and was covering me at an angle, and I took two steps out, and they opened right up with a RPK, just boom, 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 boom. And literally rounds went right in front of my face. He got hit in the Kevlar where it shot his NVGs off of his head, threw his head back, and so I dropped back and went to the right, and then he was still standing there, and when he got thrown back, then he jumped on top of me, and we got cut off from the rest of the platoon on patrol, and we had to fight our way back. Uh, but that was, all because my dad saw that.
Sure, right? God is good.
Yeah, so God told him, and um, so to lose him, you know, like that was pretty devastating. Because he was always there as a voice, uh, you know, speaking to me,
Sure.
warning me about things, and there's a lot of, man. I spent a lot of time on my dad,
Talk about your
but
dad, dude. Honor your father. Let's hear it.
um, my second deployment to Afghanistan, man, the IEDs were pretty bad. We were going into Sangin Valley, and Sangin was pretty bad. At that time, I was the company gunny, and we same thing. We just get out of an intel briefing, um, how bad the IEDs are, how many have already lost a limb, or how many lives have been lost. And I call home like, "Hey, Dad, I'm getting ready to leave in a couple of days," and he said, he's like, "Just be careful where you step." He said, "Remember that voice from the last time? It'll tell you where to step." And I was like, "What?" Yeah. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he goes, I know there's IEDs everywhere where you're going. And I'm like, where am I going? He goes, and there's no way, no way. He goes, you're going into the valley of the shadow of death. And I went, like, what? I'm just like, wow.
Okay, so I've got to ask.
Yeah.
Your dad was a Marine at some point? Your
Nope.
dad was in the military at some point?
Nope.
He had a
Never
first
served.
cousin. He had a first cousin that worked for the CIA, anything like that? Like,
Right. Nope.
all right.
He had a direct link with God,
Yeah.
when he said that, I was just like, he going into the valley of shadow, and I'm like, what in the world? Like, there's no way,
Yeah.
because I'm like, who's telling you all this stuff? Because I know, because I have, you know, TS clearance, and I'm like, how in the world are you getting this information?
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm just talking to the Lord, and so one night we're on this operation, and it was a push through singing. We're pushing up north, and we'd already been in some pretty heavy fighting already. It was pretty intense. We're clearing the whole route was just laid with IEDs. So we're clearing. We have Mikliks firing. I don't know if you know what a Miklik is. It's the line charge that fires and then it blows up and it clears a path. Yeah,
Yes. Yes. I've.
yeah,
Yep. I
yeah.
know what they
So
look like. I know what they sound like. Didn't know they had a name. Okay.
yeah,
Very
yeah,
good.
yeah.
All right.
So we're firing. So we're firing Nicklicks, and then we got dozers going in, pushing, clearing, everything out of the way after that, and the vehicles are pushing through, and I mean we're just IED after IED and clearing building after the infantry on the sides, clearing buildings after buildings, just intense firefight.
Yeah.
And one night we're sitting there, and it had been pretty tough. So I let my Marines in my vehicle. I was pulling rear security that night, and my guys were pretty tired. And I was like, "Look, I'll take the first watch. You guys go ahead and rest." So they were all sacked out. I mean, it's pitch black, dark, and I'm just sitting there, and I heard my dad's voice call my name, and I'm like, I'm in the middle of Afghanistan here, and I'm like, I thought somebody, had come from one of the other vehicles and was calling me, and I called out like, who's out there, gave the challenge and for password and everything, and nothing, and I'm like, okay, wait, is there somebody, trying to sneak up? So I'm got MVGs, I'm looking thermals, everything, making sure nobody's around me, and heard it again, and so when the operation was over, I called my dad and I said, what do you want? And he goes, what are you talking about? I said, I just got off this op and I heard you call my name. And he said, son, I call your name every night.
It's a good father.
Yeah, 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 yeah. He said, I call your name every night. I was joking with him about what do you want? Trying to just bring him, but it was just because it just baffled me, and but that was the relationship we had, we were pretty tight, and I knew my dad and his sensitivity to the voice of God, so it just like, wow.
Yeah.
So
And the truth is that when God's got his hand on a man or a woman, um, that blessing isn't just for the man. Your men, whether they knew it or not, were protected and blessed.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and
So
I'm even even since I've been out, guys that were under me have, stayed in contact with me. They've called me for prayer.
Oh, good,
They've called me, asked me for advice. Some
good.
of them have went through some pretty devastating things, after, getting out, divorce or,
Oh, yeah.
loss of, you know, family members. And so, they reach out to me, but they all know, if it, you know, God had his hand on us that whole deployment, and well, both deployments. The
Sure,
first time
yeah.
as a platoon sergeant, and then the second as a company gunny. So, yeah,
Right
so
on.
yeah,
Good deal.
yeah.
So, if you don't mind me asking, I mean, you did bring it up. You said your dad was in the hospital. What happened?
Uh, so it was my mom. So when I finally got home on emergency leave, my mom said it was just a freak accident. He was he was driving because he owned a business. So what my dad did is he'd raise money, he'd work, raise money, start a church in a town where there was no churches, bring somebody in after it got established, and then he'd move on to go start another church. So he had a door factory in this little town in Indiana, and he had went through this intersection, country road, went through an intersection. The car in front of him had slowed down because turkeys were crossing the road. Well, as he slows down, the person behind him just slammed into him really hard. And so, at first he was fine. He was up walking around. Well, when the state trooper showed up, he goes, "Mr. Medlin, you need to sit down." And my dad was like, "No, I'm fine." But what it was is he was on adrenaline. He didn't feel anything, but the
Sure.
trooper, I guess, saw something in his eyes, and he said, "No, sir, you're hurt worse than what you think. You need to sit down." And so when my dad sat down, he was on the phone with my mom,
Hmm.
and she said when he sat down, because she heard the whole conversation, she said when he sat down, he let out a yell, a scream, and it scared her. And she's like, "What's he?" And he says, "It feels like somebody just stabbed me in my back." And what it was is his kidneys had just shut down just like that. And so he had renal failure, just just like that. And and that had been his second automobile accident in a month where
Oh,
somebody
whoa.
had rear-ended him.
Really?
Yeah, he had just, you know, gotten his truck fixed and everything. Oh, my mom said he had only had the truck out for 3 or 4 days out of the shop from the last person that hit him. And then this time, and he was upset about his truck being hit again, and that's why he was walking around. But she said his body taking two impacts like that in less than a month. Just
Brutal, yeah.
yeah, it was brutal. So he actually passed while I was on my way home. So I was somewhere over the U.S. before I landed in Chicago. He had already passed.
And this is the catalyst that got you out of the Marine Corps.
Yeah, this is kind of so. At that point, I'd already had that prayer, uh, and it was like I said, it was like God said okay, and then I get home, I get the phone call and everything, so I go home on emergency leave, and so I was like, okay, I'm getting out of the Marine Corps. So I approached the Marine Corps about it, and everybody was like, it's not going to happen. You can file for what's called a hardship discharge, but nobody ever gets them. You got to have like some extenuating circumstances to get out on that. And I was like, well, I want to get out and I want to take care of my mom, take care of the family business. So uh, I went and met with a sergeant major. They told me to go to the recruiting command
Yeah.
and talk to the sergeant major, get some advice. So I went and talked to him. Uh, he had some numbers for me to call at headquarters Marine Corps in Quantico. So I call headquarters Marine Corps. I'm talking to these secretaries, all these people over I forget, manpower and personnel, basically all the ones that tell you where you're going to fit in the Marine Corps.
Hmm.
And they're telling me what I need to do, what I need to submit. So I get all this paperwork together, get a package together, I fax it, and when I talk to this lady, she's like, "Well, nobody ever gets this, but good luck." And so I fax this in. 2 days later, that lady calls me and says, just gonna let you know the general over manpower has signed off on it. You have 2 weeks to separate from the Marine Corps." I went, "Wait, what?"
Wow.
So just like that, I was out. So I had to go back to Okinawa, get all my household belongings, and come back and be separated from the Marine Corps within 2 weeks. So just like
Wow.
that, it was like I was out.
Wow.
And I I pray that like, God, you want me out? You got to get me out because I'm not doing it. And then it's like, and everybody's telling me, no, it's not going to happen. Don't expect it. And then 2 days later, after getting that package, or 3 days later, she calls and says, the general signed off and you're out. So,
Wow.
so I was out that fast.
Wow. That never happens. Like, I
It
mean,
never happens. Never
wow.
happens. And even when it happened, because my command was telling me, be prepared to come back. You need to, be prepared. And didn't have to go back. And
No kidding.
everybody was just like, they couldn't believe it. Everybody couldn't believe it. They were like, wow, like we've never seen this ever.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's God.
Yeah. For real. For
Yeah,
real. And I know that the people who don't believe are going to listen to this and wonder how you can believe and love a God that got to you by, removing your dad.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I understand, but I know that those who don't believe are gonna hear that and they're gonna be like, this is insane.
yeah,
This is
yeah.
insane.
But he will do whatever necessary to get you
Yeah.
involved, to
And
get
and
where he
that's
wants you. Yeah,
and he won't be wrong. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah,
That's the hard thing I think for the believer to understand.
yeah. Well, it's even like this, and people have a hard time. Even with the story of Samson, the first wife, the family didn't want him marrying the woman that he did. But when you read scripture, everybody skips over. They don't realize it, where it says, and God told him to
Hmm.
go and marry, this woman. Okay, yeah, it didn't last. Maybe it was for the whole purpose of him pulling off the gates and then setting the fields on fire by tying the two foxes together. Maybe that's what God wanted. Everybody's criticizing him. He married outside of his belief, outside of, his people, but it says, but God told him. And sometimes, God does things that we don't understand, but it's for a purpose and a
Oh
reason.
yeah.
I've learned, you got to do. It don't make sense at times, but you know what? You just go with it. Okay, God, I don't get it, but you do, and so I'm just going to follow your footsteps. Where you take me, where you direct me, what you do. Uh, and so I got out and went back evangelizing, and I went full time as an evangelist, and you know at that time now I had two kids, and dragging them around cross country, living in a travel trailer.
Hmm.
Uh, we still had a house that we owned, but we were on the road more than we were at the house, so we rented our house out. And
You must have been homeschooling or something.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
the kids were homeschooled, and we we took them through several curriculums.
So how does a traveling preacher sustain himself financially?
So uh, you get invited to places to preach, and so depending on um, how long you're there, churches haven't set how much they're going to pay you. A lot of times it's what they call love offering,
Sure.
and so it's people give out of the abundance of the heart. If they feel like they've been touched or somebody in their family's been touched, and so they may give a little more. Maybe you didn't do so good, so they give a little less.
Sure, right, right.
But
That's
yeah,
enough to keep you afloat.
yeah. I mean, we never went without, never went
Nice.
begging. I mean, it was, God opened doors for us, and I mean, went places I never thought I'd go. Preaching in some big churches that I never thought, I would ever, step foot in. Like I would be the guy that they called upon. But it happened, and so man, we would do like we were in Maine, Bangor, Maine. We spent like 4 months in Bangor, Maine,
No kidding.
doing revival there.
That's where so I'm in Kittery, Maine, way south Maine, but yeah,
Really?
yeah. No
Wow.
kidding.
Oh,
Bangor, huh?
I've been in Bangor for actually I was just there back in January. That the church that I was at, they every once in a while they still have me come back, even though I'm pastoring here in Muncie.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, yeah,
You
and
probably fly instead of
yeah,
drive.
I
Yeah.
fly, yeah, but
Well, I tell you what, if you ever get back up to Bangor, Maine, I will make a pilgrimage
yeah,
and come and see you.
yeah, yeah. But Bangor, Maine, been Hebron, Maine,
Mm-hmm.
um, Norway,
Yep.
preached in Norway. Um, yeah, so yeah,
Nice. Cool.
Calais, all the way up in Calais.
Really? No
Yeah,
kidding.
yeah,
Wow, you've been all up there.
yeah. Up in
Wow.
the county there, as they say.
Yes. Yes. No kidding.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Well, that's good. I'm glad. I was gonna ask earlier if you ever, because you said everywhere in the East Coast. I was like, let's see if he's been to
yeah,
Maine or not.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And then Rhode Island, Massachusetts, been in Boston
Sure.
a couple times. Never really did much in New York, New Jersey, um, and then Virginia, North Carolina, Florida a lot of churches in Florida,
Nice.
Mississippi a lot, Alabama a lot, Kentucky, Tennessee,
Wow.
Ohio. So it just Pennsylvania, um, more toward western part of the state.
Nice.
Well, there was. I take that back. There was a couple times in Philadelphia. So yeah, but
So
oh,
you're obviously very missionary minded here,
yeah.
which kind of begs the question: with your background in the Marine Corps, did you ever do any missionary work outside the country?
Oh yeah, yeah. So um, when uh, uh, when I was younger, well, yeah. Let me start with this one. So
Okay.
me and my mom, as part of my graduation, uh, before I went off to the Marine Corps, we went to China,
Oh,
went to Hong Kong before it uh, became part of China. And because in '97, I think, is when they went back. So this is
mm-hmm.
'95.
Okay.
So in '95, um, we smuggled Bibles into China from Hong Kong.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, yeah. So it was a uh, pretty, pretty intense thing. And so there was one particular time where I mean, everybody uh, got stopped.
What'd they do?
Yeah, except for me. And they confiscated all their Bibles. I mean, everybody would have like one or two in the purse or backpack.
Sure.
Bro, I've got this vest on, and I got Bibles stuck in this vest underneath the sweatshirt, and it's the middle of the summer, so I'm
That's so
sweating.
funny.
I got a sweatshirt on, and then I got a picture of it too. I got a big old backpack on the front
Oh
stuffed
wow.
with Bibles, and a backpack on the back stuffed with Bibles. And we're on this train going to the border, and one of the ones fell out of the vest
Yeah.
in my that was underneath my sweatshirt somehow, and it landed on the floor of the train. And everybody kind of looked, and I just kind of bent down and I grabbed it and I opened the backpack and just stuffed stuffed it in,
Oh my
and
god.
I got across the border. and they never stopped me. They just waved me on through. But everybody else, my mom. So I'm in China all by myself. Here I am, like, just turned 18 and getting ready to, go experience life on my own. And mom's not around, nobody else is around. I'm like, I was, it was a good couple hours where I was just like, here I am with a bunch of, and of course, they say, uh, be careful. Some of the people come up, start asking questions because they could be, they're secret police and stuff. And so they would start like questioning what, people come start speaking good English and,
Yeah.
what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm just sightseeing, just waiting on some friends. And, and then I would move along and somebody else would come up. And, but eventually, they eventually let everybody go, but they held them for a good couple hours. And so I was over there by myself, just waiting.
Just waiting for them to let everybody go. So
Yeah.
they detained them for maybe a little what, maybe a few hours a day.
Yeah,
What?
it was about 3, 4 hours. They detained and questioned them, wanting to know where, the Bibles were going, who they knew in China and everything. But of course, nobody knew anything. They would just, the guy that was leading us, he was the only one, and we just followed him.
Sure, right.
So, it was because it was easy for us to deny then. So,
Yeah, right. Just be
yeah,
like, hey, we just have these, to
yeah,
give out.
yeah.
So, how did this work? Did you followed this guy someplace and they had like a little drop off point where you
Oh
just
yeah,
drop off
yeah,
the
yeah.
Bibles?
It was a drop off point, and then from there it get distributed. They go further up into the country. So yeah,
No kidding.
yeah,
Wow.
it was cool because you go into this place and like, man, there were stacks of Bibles everywhere that they were repackaging, putting in different boxes or different way, and you're seeing how they're doing it. It's like, wow, it was an operation. So
No kidding.
yeah,
Wow, that's pretty impressive. So your first covert operation was for Jesus. There you
yeah,
go.
yep, yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah,
I like it.
yeah,
I like it a
yeah,
lot.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Um, so did you do any other missionary work or was that the only one
No,
or
when I got out of the Marine Corps, second time I um, went to Thailand, preached at a conference over there in Thailand, and then went to Azerbaijan, uh, and we connected with an underground church in Azerbaijan.
okay, where's Azerbaijan?
So as Azerbaijan is an old Soviet bloc state, but so it's like on the north side of Iran. So I'm trying to think here. You have Turkey, Iran, and then Azerbaijan, um, and it's kind of north border, if I remember correctly. Let me look at the map because you have a bunch of old Soviet bloc states that are, yeah. So it's on the Caspian Sea. So yeah. So yeah, it's kind of northwest of Iran.
Okay.
So, and it's a predominantly, it's like 90, I think 94, 95% Muslim. So they do allow, you can be Christian there, they say, but yet you can't have a meeting of more than 10 people, or it's considered a gathering and it's illegal. And so to have church, sure, be a Christian, but you can't gather, you can't meet.
Right.
So they would sneak us into this service, and it was a house, but the house was like gutted, and there's you had only the out supporting walls, no inner supporting walls, and so it was like there was like over 200 people sitting there. I'm like, yeah, we're we're definitely breaking the law here.
No
So it was like
kidding.
a long, kind of trying to describe it. So if I'm up at the pulpit area or where the speakers were, you had this long view here where everybody was sitting in a door that went out, and then the other direction was long and open as well. People were sitting over here, and so people would come in like two at a time, three at a time, and they'd get up and they'd leave in the middle of someone, and they may have been there already for like 2 or 3 hours, but
Wow.
it's just one speaker after another just get up. One would get done, and another would get up, and one get up, and just and it was continuous, and they would do that, you know, for pretty much the whole day, and
Really?
yeah,
That's amazing.
and people would
And
just come.
I like this because it's consistent with the videos that I've seen of the underground church in like China or Vietnam.
Yeah,
And it's really antithetical to our church experience,
yeah.
you know, at least
You know,
mine anyway.
yeah. What's amazing about the underground church in like Vietnam and China is, you know, they say that it's so large that they can't even number it, but they think it's in the, you know, millions, hundreds of thousands, because there's so many that, nobody everybody's afraid to come out and say so.
Yeah, well, yeah, right? And rightly
Yeah,
so. Rightly
yeah,
so.
yeah.
I have heard, and I don't know how true this is, but I have heard that a lot of the Christians in China tell our missionaries that when they pray for America, they pray that we'll be persecuted for our faith because it'll actually make us stronger Christians.
That's yeah. Well, in Azerbaijan, when was asking them what do you want us to pray for you? You guys want us because they're under oppression. The Christians, and the government does crack down on 'em. And so we asked them, do you want us to pray for your freedom? They said, no, 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 no. Don't pray for that, because when when there was a Soviet bloc state, everything kind of opened up and they were able to come out of hiding. And but they said they lost a lot of people. A lot of people, just because of the freedoms and everything, the church diminished. But once the oppression started coming back and the persecution, it grew again. It
Mm,
grew even more. And they said, so don't pray for our freedom, our religious freedom. They said, just pray that we can reach, our nation.
sure, right.
And it was like, wow, like, you know, that's pretty intense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a different mentality, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
No kidding.
yeah.
Wow.
So it was like, man, but yeah, they didn't want us to pray for any religious freedom, just pray that they can be successful in reaching, their nation. So
Okay. Wow. So you've done missionary work, you've done the traveling preacher thing.
yeah.
You don't look like you're traveling right now, my friend.
No,
That looks like a house.
yeah, yeah. This is actually the back porch that I've turned into my office.
Nice.
Yeah, because my office became the nursery for the 3-year-old. So,
Oh, you got a 3-year-old.
yeah,
Good
yeah,
for you.
yeah.
Good for
So,
you. Yeah. See, you're a couple years older than I am, and I'm trying to submit the paperwork to management to let us just have one more because the youngest one is 6.
yep,
It's been
yep.
denied, but it's all right. But no, I love kids.
Yeah, I did too. And this, tell you what, is nothing like when you have one when you're older too, though. It's just like, it's totally different. People make fun of me like, oh, you're Father Abraham, but it's like, it's
But
just,
dude, no, dude. I remember being a dad at like 27, 28, and I remember like when this last one came along, I was in my late 30s. You're not sweating the small stuff anymore.
yeah, yeah,
You know
you're
what I
not,
mean? You know where to put the emphasis. You almost feel like apologizing to your oldest one, being like, "I'm real sorry that I was mad about that stuff."
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. The things you got upset for before is like, because my older kids were like, you wouldn't let us get away with that. Why
oh
you
yeah,
let him get away with
yeah,
that?
right.
Yeah,
Chocolate milk with dinner. I don't see why
yeah,
we can't do
yeah.
this.
Go ahead. Go ahead, eat that candy bar before dinner.
We'll be fine.
Yeah,
The other 3 lived. You'll be all right.
yeah,
That's funny. That's funny.
yeah.
How many do you got?
I got 4.
Okay, me too.
So I had three in my first marriage,
Yeah,
and then one in this one. So
right on, right on.
yeah, yeah,
Good deal. Yeah, no, kids are great. I love them.
yeah,
Wish I had started earlier and had more. It's honestly one of the few I mean, we've both served our country, you know what I mean, and it
yeah.
was worthwhile and everything, but I mean, honestly, kids are where it's at.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I wouldn't trade it, for anything. I would have, if I could go back, I would try to have a dozen,
Yeah, right?
more, if I
Yeah.
could. So yeah, but now, so I pastor now,
Okay, yeah.
and so there we have so many kids, little kids, and I love it when they come up and they hug me, they call me pastor, and it's just like they're all my little kids now. They're just,
Awesome.
it's like I got a bunch of grandkids, so it's
Right
just,
on.
yeah.
I
So
like it.
yeah,
So how did you like okay, I'm gonna go from being a an evangelist to I'm gonna have a home church. Did you feel God calling you to that as well, or how
yeah,
did that all
yeah.
go?
So it was. I had been traveling quite a bit. I've been on the road, and then I kept feeling God tell me it's time to transition. I'm like, I thought I would be an evangelist for a lot longer, but God would just start speaking to me and dealing with me about it, and so I'd pray. I'd get a burden for an area, and um, there were some things happening. I don't want to get into a lot of it, but I just, if God calls you to do something, uh, and it doesn't contradict the Word of God, I tell people, don't let anybody hold you back. And there were some people that tried to hold me back from that, that tried to interfere. And it was like, and so I'm praying, I'm saying, God, I don't understand. You're telling me to do this, but I have so and so over here trying to stop that and tell me no, it's not of you, but yet I can't get it off my chest. I'm waking up crying. I'm going to bed crying because I feel this burden for people. And it was so strong too. It was the same thing as evangelize. It's like I can't get it off my chest that this is where you want me to be. And so uh so
So
I was,
like people trying to hold you back saying that you were disqualified for some reason or
yeah, well, yeah, so it's um I guess I'll have to get into this. So when you belong in an organization, in a licensed organization, a lot of times they want you to go through certain hoops and certain channels for you to either take a church or start a church.
Mhm.
And I was trying to do it the right way. And I even had men, that so-called prophets, who would call me and tell me, "Hey, I don't know where it's going to come from, but you're going to get a call this week for this church, um, you know, and God wants you to go here." And it's like, okay, but then men who were higher up, would stop it and say, "No, you're not going there." And it's like, well, why? God's talking to me. I have somebody calling me who has no idea, and it's just, sometimes politics can get too much involved in organizations,
Amen.
and I think, if we can get away from the politics of it all, and you know still have the fellowship and everything, and be focused on the kingdom, we'd have greater success than what we do. Um, and so that's what it was, is just somebody who I looked up to as a mentor, as a leader in my life. I let him have too much say, really, is what it is. And that was my fault. And then he tried to take credit for a lot of things in my life, and I was like, no, 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 no. My dad taught me a lot of what
Mhm.
I know, and so I just, you know, finally it was so bad. It was so bad. It caused some division between me and my first wife.
Okay.
That's why I had remarried. My first wife did. She eventually said she didn't want to be a pastor's wife.
Okay.
And so she filed for divorce. And so I went on the road. I was actually in California at the time when I got the call to come here to Muncie, Indiana. And uh, I was in California. I was actually, you know, teaching Bible studies. I was looking at starting a church there when this pastor had called, and I had been here before, and he was like, "Look, I'm ready to retire. Can you come?" And so I did, and it wasn't a part of the organization, but it affiliated with it.
Hmm.
So there wouldn't be any interference. And so I came and was presented before the people. And it's like, look, if you give me 1 year, if I can't help us grow in 1 year, then I'll walk away and I'll go back to California. So they gave me 1 year, and that was in January of 2020.
Oh, wow.
So COVID hit. So I'm like, well, God, I guess I'm going back to California.
Yeah. Right.
But in the middle of it all, in the middle of COVID, man, we grew. I mean, it was I can't explain it. It's just like it was already a small congregation, and we were starting to hit 60, 65 within just a matter of a month or two, and
Wow.
yeah, and we grew, and so uh, it happened so fast that I wasn't prepared for it, and I brought somebody in to try to be, a help and assistant. Well, then, he caused a bunch of problems, ran people off, split the church, and it was like, okay, you know, you're done. So, because in the position I had the ability to hire and fire, so I just basically fired him. Like you're not going to cause problems here. And so it became like a roller coaster for about 2 years, but now we're back up to those same numbers that we were hitting during COVID.
No
Um,
kidding.
we're close to um, hitting 70 and still growing. I mean, we got people. I like last night after church, I got a text from a guy who just out of the blue, hey, can I be baptized sometime this week? And I'm like, never even met him. Don't even know who
Yeah.
he is. And it's just like, hey, I want to be baptized. Okay, sure.
Sure.
Let's meet. So, so it's been pretty successful, and I've integrated my business. I have a business that I've integrated into the ministry as well, and so I'm a bail bondsman. So, uh,
Okay. All right. Like neat. That's okay. You don't hear that every day.
yeah,
Um, I, I'm, I'm gonna ask a question if I'm out of bounds.
okay,
Let me know. But we're definitely gonna go back to the I'm a Bales bombsman pastor thing because
yeah,
it's
okay,
unique.
yeah,
Your wife was with you when you were traveling around and doing evangelical work.
yes, yeah,
Yeah, and if you want me to edit this out, I will. But what's the problem with going from like a faith-based, um, a faith-based ministry where you're gonna get love offerings, and that's your primary source of income,
yeah.
to I want to set down roots and have one source of reliable income.
So we had this discussion many a times, and it was more. She didn't feel like she was uh, ready for that. Uh, she,
Okay.
she didn't feel like she was a pastor's wife material.
Okay.
And she constantly told me, I don't want to do it. Basically, she just didn't want to deal with people. And it was like, well, I mean, ultimately, God's calling me. You're gonna have to
Yeah.
go along. And but she decided, she didn't want that.
Fair
Um,
enough. Fair enough.
and I'd say, so she eventually she passed of cancer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and it was just back in July of this year, but we'd already been divorced for 4 years
Sure, right.
when she passed. But I think part of that, was brought on because she resisted. And I hate to say that, but I really, because I prayed, and she was actually healed at one point, but she still refused to go with me.
Mm,
So, uh,
right.
I mean, and if you're not willing to go where the husband's leading, and God's wanting me here, then he's going to remove you in some form or fashion. So
Yeah, right. No, that's it's a harsh truth.
yeah, yeah. So you
So
know,
okay, so that's a more profound answer than I was expecting.
yeah,
And again, in all respect to you, you can tell me to take anything out of this that you want to, and I will.
yeah,
Um, so you're in Indiana. You know that you need to make a secondary source of income, and you pick Bale's bondsman.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
how does that go?
Well, um, so at one point I had thought of being in law enforcement. I was actually at one point I had been asked to go to Michigan to start a church, and I had looked at doing like the DOT, driving around in the SUV, pulling semis over and everything. I was going to do that, but um, just when that didn't work out, and I came to Indiana when I got asked to come here, it was like, okay, so what am I going to do? And this was something I had looked at when I was in the Marine Corps years ago when I was stationed in California. Me and a couple of buddies were like, yeah, man, we can do this on the weekends. And if, but my wife at the time was like, that's dangerous. And I'm like, I just got back from Iraq. What's more dangerous,
Nothing.
So, yeah, I guess the streets of LA and San Diego were worse than,
Real rough.
yeah. So, um, so I looked into it, and I thought, man, what a great way to even reach people, when you get them out of jail. Um, and so I went and got licensed and started it. And a lot of the people that I run into, it's amazing how um, it's like a God moment every time. Um, we got a couple that are in the church now that are part of the church because of it. But it's like we meet, and it's like they get out. Some of them, they may be crying or they're upset. They're like, man, and you start talking to them, and like, well, hey, I'm a pastor. Let me pray for you. And they're like, oh man, this is what I needed. This is really, and then they're like, where's the church at? Can I come? Can I visit? Yeah, come on. And so they come. We baptize people. We brought them to church. Uh, I mean, I just funny. Last week, I arrested a girl who's been on the run. She failed to appear in court, but I was hired by another bondsman to get her. So I went and got her, brought her back to jail. Well, we're standing in the Sally Port waiting for her to be booked in, and she starts talking about her life being messed up. And so I told her, I said, look, I'm a pastor. Let me pray with you right now. Well, come to find out, she grew up in a Pentecostal church. Come to find out, her pastor is someone that's well known in Indianapolis who I know. And it was like, wait a minute, like you grew up in so and so's church, like, and she's like, yeah, she's like, this is how God always does. He always knows how to find me. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, this is a God moment. I like the fact
Absolutely.
that I'm the one that picked you up and is bringing you. Is God's telling you, it's time to get right. Let's get back in church. Let's live for God. She's like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. So,
That's
I
awesome.
gave her some information for another church to visit if she wanted that's closer to where she lives and get her connected with that pastor and everything. So yeah, so it's people looking at her like, man, you're a bondsman and you're a pastor. Like, how does that work? And don't that contradict? I'm like, no, I'm trying to save people, trying to help them out, give them a second chance.
It's probably the best, like, I don't know, if exposition of the gospel in real life, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
like, I'm bringing you in and now you're free to go.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
What's funny is the people in the church, they love it. They're like, oh, Pat, they want to hear the story, the latest story. But so
Sure.
we have wanted posters up on our walls in the church, and it's people who we want to see in the church. So, wanted by the Holy Ghost,
I love it.
you know. So yeah,
I love
and
it.
so it's family members that we pray for. It's lost loved ones that we pray for them to be.
That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow, that's wild. That
yeah,
is wild.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So how many years have you been at that?
As a bondsman,
Sure.
5 years, five, six
Okay.
years. Yeah,
No
6 years.
kidding. That's cool. Now, how does that work? Are you some no, that's obviously not a regular police officer, but you are an officer of the law.
So yeah, so um, you're an officer of the court, and your only authorization to arrest is somebody who has failed to appear in court. But it has to be somebody um, that is on contract with the insurance company um, for the bond. So let's just say you were bonded, you got a brother, and you wanted to bond him out, and your brother goes on the run. He has to sign a contract with us first,
Mm-hmm.
and so if he goes on the run, that's what gives that and the warrant is what get and what's called a order to produce is what gives me the authority to arrest him. And so, like even on my license, it has a Supreme Court case that because it's from the Supreme Court of the United States that gives us the authority to arrest.
Okay.
So, so that's why we can cross state lines. So our jurisdiction is the whole U.S.
That's sweet.
Yeah, but you have states that are against bail bonds and stuff. So we kind of play by their rules a little bit, but yeah, you
Okay.
can go anywhere.
So hang on. I gotta ask a question because now you're piquing my curiosity.
Yeah.
How so in Maine there are no bail bondsmen.
Okay. Yeah.
So could I still be a bail bondsman? Because your job sounds
You
like fun to me.
Yeah, so you would have to, I don't know if like Vermont or New Hampshire have bondsmen, so you'd have to be what's called a out of state license
Mm-hmm.
bondsman. So you get your license out of state.
Okay.
So, but like with Maine, I could still come there and arrest if somebody was hiding there.
Sure, right.
But so usually what happens if states have certain laws or they outlaw bail bonds, what we do is we contact the local authorities, tell them, hey, we got a fugitive. And a lot of times they tell us, well, if you get eyes on, call us. Well, and that's what
Okay.
we'll play by your rules a little bit.
Okay, fair enough.
It just depends on the situation, but for the most part, you can go anywhere. So we work for like, U.S. Marshals, FBI
Sure.
task force, so
Now,
yeah,
what kind of training do you have to do this job?
none. No. Yeah. So
Okay, cool. We're gonna keep talking about Jesus, but you and I are gonna have a little
yeah,
phone call
yeah,
because like my job, I'm a machinist, but I'm a people person,
yeah,
and like I used to tell people that the infantry is a people business.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
And what you're doing is a people business.
yeah, yeah.
And I okay, but we'll talk about that more some other time.
All right.
Um, so you evangelize these people that you bring in, and like do they give their testimony, and do they talk about being arrested and
Some do.
all that?
Some will. I don't make them do it or
Of course
require
not.
them to do it, if they feel comfortable with doing it. But but they will, say, thankful for, for God bringing me here,
Hmm.
for meeting, uh, Pastor Medlin, and I've got two other guys that in the church that work for me as well, and so they interact with people as well. So yeah,
Interesting.
so yeah, I I could have pretty much a whole team if I wanted to. So many people want to do it. Yeah,
I can see pastors watching this right now and talking to the deacons, like, okay, boys, I got a plan.
yeah,
We're gonna become bail bondsmen. We're
yeah,
gonna bring them in.
yeah. Yeah,
That's wild.
I've even got, I can't give his name because he asked me not to, but I got an evangelist that is getting licensed and wants to work with me because he lives here in the state, but he doesn't want people to know what he does.
Okay,
So,
that's fair.
uh, he's getting in on it because he's like, but see, he came from the streets, and so he's like, I could really do this. I know a lot of people, so
That's cool.
yeah. So
That's
it's like,
cool.
yeah, you would be a great asset. So we're gonna bring you on board.
That's cool.
Yeah, but the church, I mean, we're growing. It's things are really, it's like things are really starting to pick up and take off here. And Everybody's just excited. The team, the past 2 years, I've really focused on building a core team of people, individuals, so that when we start having revival, that we would be prepared and we'd be able to work together as a team. It's happening, it's working. And I got a good group of people. I couldn't ask for, anybody better than what I got. They're amazing, all of them. I got a family they're from Maine. It's a husband and wife. And they're both, accountants. So they do all of our accounting. They're from like Lewiston, Portland area. But um, in fact, he still owns his accounting firm back in Maine. It's Harlow Financial. I think it's there in Lewiston. But he's doing his stuff here, and he handles all of our finances, and so does his wife. She's my church secretary, and
Nice.
then I've got an assistant who he's been with his church for, oh man, 13, 14 years. He's one of the last remaining uh, original saints from when I first got here. Yeah. So yeah, and then everybody else is pretty new. We have a fresh new congregation, and we're growing. And then I got one guy, his name's Steven, and he's one of my bail agents as well. But he comes from a background of being in the occult. So he was in the occult. God delivered him from the occult, and like hearing his testimony is pretty intense. Yeah, he's yeah.
So I've got this podcast that I'm doing, right? And
Uh,
if I could talk to him,
oh yeah, yeah.
if
I
he
can get
would
you
be
set up. Yeah,
interested,
yeah. I'm sure
because
he
like,
would love to talk
because
about it.
my niche right now is veterans, but I can't stay in that space forever.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah,
So yeah, talk to him and see if he'd be interested.
yeah. I'm sure he would. We do. So we have a thing that we do. It's kind of like a podcast, I guess. But every Sunday night at midnight, we do what's called midnight church, and it was his idea to come up with it. Because he came to me. He's like, what do we do about people that can't come to church on Sunday morning or that work odd shifts? And I was
Mm,
like, I don't know. What do you want to do about it? He goes, what if we started having a midnight church? And I was like, well, I said, you guys run it. I'll support you. I'll back you up. And so we started doing it. Well, then after a couple months, we switched from having actual midnight church, and we had actually people show up at midnight. We had visitors, but then uh, it just it didn't really take off. So then we did started uh, like a round table discussion, and so we do that. So we call it, nights at the round table. And we'll sit there, we'll talk scripture, and we do that every Sunday night at midnight. And people will type in questions, they'll ask questions, they'll ask how's it, certain scriptures and everything. And but this was his idea, the guy that was in the occult, it was his idea. He came.
Okay. So let's do a plug for your podcast right now. It's Midnight Church, and where can we find it?
You can find it on Facebook, on our church Facebook page at Freedom Point Apostolic Church.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we just did one last night. We kind of talked about a little bit, what's going on with in our nation, and how Charlie Kirk and his testimonies affected our nation and even the world. So that was kind of our focus last night.
Very cool.
Yeah,
No
yeah.
kidding. So the one thing that I wanted to do every interview, because I believe that God, does what he wants. I didn't do it with Slick just because just the flow of the interview. I Do you think there's anything on your heart that God has given you to say or that he would want you to say or has you say consistently as a part of your message?
Y- Um, yeah, dealing with veterans, this is one thing that helped me. If you're dealing with PTSD, and if you're dealing with the guilt of some things, one thing I learned, and I found this in scripture, and I shared this. It's funny. I shared it with a guy who was he has a doctorate in psychology, and he was doing a study on PTSD. And I said, well, I found it in the Bible, and he was like, where? The story of Uriah. Because what is the one thing about people with PTSD is we want to be back over there with our brothers. And Uriah, when David called him home, he couldn't go home. He stayed out and slept near the gate because he said, I'd rather be at the front lines with my brother. And everybody I know that has suffered with PTSD, yeah, it's the memories and everything, but what's the one thing, the most driving thing within us is we want to be back on the front line and feel like we're being used.
And it feels like you've never done enough.
You feel like I have not completed my mission. And what I've told everybody is your mission has changed.
Ooh.
It's no longer out there, taking lives. Now your mission is to save lives. Your mission is to reach people. And when God gave me that helped me a lot. And so I try to share with every veteran that I come in contact with that's dealing with PTSD, wonder where, what to do with their life. And I try to tell them, your mission is different now. God is calling you to save lives.
So I hope today's interview with Luke Medlin has increased your faith. I hope that you believe that there's a God on the other side of all of this that really wants to connect with you and work through you. But please understand, profound religious experiences are few and far between. What God does assure each believer of is both the peace and presence of the Holy Spirit in their lives. One of the big things that I took away from this interview was when he was going into that area that was just south of Baghdad and he heard God say to him, "These are mine." I like that. These are mine. It's an unequivocal statement. It's not because they held this certain theological idea or they had this religious bent or they were a part of this certain creed. It was just the simple fact, these are mine. If you feel that God is calling you to claim you as his own, don't hesitate. Reach out to Jesus Christ and he will save you.